The human who walked into the wrong arena. The grand arena of Thika Prime had been designed with a very specific purpose. To impress. To intimidate. And, if necessary, to remind every visitor exactly where they stood in the hierarchy of one of the most powerful warrior civilizations in known space. Its towering arches stretched hundreds of feet overhead, curving in impossible angles that seemed to mock conventional engineering. Massive pillars of dark silver stone rose from the arena floor like the trunks of ancient metallic trees, their surfaces etched with thousands of years of victories, sacrifices, and royal decrees. To the Thicarians, the arena was sacred. To Marcus Chen, it was unbelievably confusing. Marcus stood at a crossroads deep within the royal complex, staring at a holographic map that somehow managed to make less sense every time he looked at it. "How is this possible?" he muttered. The map rotated. 3 corridors became 5. 5 became 7. Then somehow connected to a staircase that physically couldn't exist based on the building's exterior dimensions. Marcus sighed. 3 months. He had spent 3 entire months studying Thicarian culture. 3 months learning their language. 3 months researching their customs. 3 months writing papers on their architectural philosophy. And he still got lost every single week. A nearby palace attendant glanced at him sympathetically. "Having navigation difficulties, Dr. Chen?" Marcus looked up. Navigation difficulties imply there was ever a chance of successful navigation. The attendant blinked. Marcus pointed accusingly at the map. "This building violates at least 6 principles of spatial logic." The attendant smiled politely. "It follows traditional Thicarian design." "Exactly my point." The attendant appeared unsure whether that was a joke. Marcus wasn't entirely sure either. Eventually the attendant pointed toward a corridor. "The ceremony is already beginning. That route will take you there more quickly." Marcus glanced down the indicated hallway. "You're absolutely sure?" "Of course." Marcus narrowed his eyes. That level of confidence usually preceded disaster. Unfortunately, he was already late. So he thanked the attendant and hurried away. The ceremony itself wasn't actually important to his research. At least, not originally. Marcus was a xenoanthropologist. His entire career revolved around studying alien civilizations and understanding how cultures evolved under different environmental and historical pressures. Most researchers focused on economics. Some focused on religion. Others focused on diplomacy. Marcus specialized in warrior societies. Which was precisely why Thika Prime fascinated him. The Thicarians should not have worked. On paper, their civilization looked like a recipe for endless conflict. Their culture valued strength, competition, martial excellence, strategic dominance. And yet somehow, they were remarkably stable, remarkably ethical, remarkably sophisticated. Instead of descending into constant warfare, they had transformed their warrior instincts into a system built around honor, responsibility, and service. It was one of the greatest cultural paradoxes Marcus had ever encountered. Which was why he'd volunteered for the exchange program. Most researchers preferred safer assignments. More predictable assignments. Marcus had always preferred curiosity over comfort. His academic advisor frequently described this tendency as professionally concerning. Marcus considered it a compliment. As he hurried through the corridor, he reviewed his plans for the day. Attend ceremony. Observe interactions. Take notes. Return to quarters. Write dissertation material. Simple. Safe. Academic. Exactly the kind of day he enjoyed. Unfortunately, the universe had other plans. The corridor ended abruptly. Marcus frowned. The map had suggested a gallery entrance. Instead, he found himself standing before a massive set of ceremonial doors. Both were already open. Beyond them lay blinding light. Noise. Movement. Thousands of voices. Marcus stopped. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. He checked the map again. The map insisted he was correct. Marcus trusted the map approximately as much as he trusted experimental AI translation software. Which was to say, not at all. Still, the ceremony had already started. He was late. and walking away would only make him later. So Marcus straightened his scholar's robes and stepped forward. The noise hit him first. Thousands of voices. Thousands of spectators. Thousands of warriors. Then the scale of the arena revealed itself. Marcus froze. Oh! That was all he managed. Oh! The arena was enormous. Far larger than he'd imagined. The elevated galleries surrounding the central floor were completely filled. Every seat occupied. Every platform crowded. Every balcony overflowing with spectators. At the center stood the ceremonial challenge grounds. An enormous circular platform constructed from polished black stone. And directly in front of Marcus, there was absolutely nobody. His stomach dropped. Because he suddenly realized something. Everyone else was elevated. Everyone else was watching. Everyone else was seated. Only one person had entered from the floor level. Only one person stood inside the challenge grounds. Him. Marcus slowly turned around. The doors behind him had already closed. That's bad. A voice echoed across the arena. A powerful female voice. Instantly recognizable. Queen Varana. The unconquered. Ruler of the Thicarian Empire. Marcus felt his stomach drop even further. Because the queen was speaking. Which meant the ceremony had already reached an important moment. And because she was speaking, everyone was silent. And because everyone was silent, everyone could hear his accidental entrance. Every footstep. Every movement. Every awkward breath. Marcus looked around. Thousands of eyes stared back. Thousands of eyes. He had never been the center of attention before. He immediately decided he disliked it. Intensely. For several seconds nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody seemed entirely certain what they were seeing. A human? On the challenge floor? During a royal ceremony? Wearing scholar robes? Marcus desperately searched for an escape route. There wasn't one. The nearest exit was behind the Queen's platform. Which meant crossing the entire arena floor. In front of everyone. While interrupting the ceremony. Which somehow felt worse. So he remained where he was. Hoping reality would somehow correct itself. Reality declined. Queen Varana's gaze shifted. Locked onto him. Marcus had studied her for months. From a distance. Through archives. Historical records. Military analyses. Political documentation. None of that adequately prepared him for direct eye contact. The Queen radiated authority. Not because she demanded it. Because she embodied it. She was tall even for a Thicarian. Broad-shouldered. Powerfully built. Every movement controlled. Every expression measured. This was a woman who had spent 40 years defeating every challenge placed before her. And now, she was looking directly at him. Marcus suddenly wished he were literally anywhere else in the galaxy. The silence deepened. The atmosphere shifted. Something important was happening. Marcus didn't know what. But everyone else clearly did. And whatever it was, his presence had just become part of it. The realization hit him like a freight train. The challenge floor. The ceremonial position. The crowd's reaction. The Queen's attention. Oh no. Oh no no no. He finally understood. This wasn't observer space. This wasn't guest space. This wasn't scholar space. This was challenge space. The place where warriors stepped forward. The place where champions accepted trials. The place where participants declared intent. And Marcus Chen, through a catastrophic combination of bad directions and worse luck, had just walked directly into it. As thousands of warriors watched. As the Queen spoke. As history waited. And somewhere deep inside his mind, a very small voice whispered, "This is going to become a problem." The voice was correct. Very, very correct. The problem no warrior dared solve. For several seconds, Marcus remained frozen in place. Not because he was brave. Not because he was confident. But because his brain had completely stopped functioning. Thousands of eyes were staring at him. The Queen was staring at him. And he had just realized he was standing in the worst possible location inside the entire arena. Challenge space. The sacred ground where warriors stepped forward to accept impossible tasks. Marcus wasn't a warrior. He was a researcher. A professional note-taker. His greatest achievement this month had been successfully translating a 700-year-old Thicarian military manuscript without accidentally changing the meaning of a treaty clause. That was not a skill set generally associated with heroic arena moments. Unfortunately, reality didn't seem interested in hearing his objections. High above, Queen Varana continued speaking. Her powerful voice echoed effortlessly through the vast arena. Look around you. The command carried enough authority that even Marcus instinctively obeyed. Thousands of warriors stood assembled. Veterans, champions, generals, masters of combat. The greatest fighters their civilization had ever produced. Every one of them silent. Every one of them motionless. The Queen's expression darkened slightly. 3 generations ago, our bloodline stood as the symbol of Thicarian excellence. Her voice remained calm, measured, controlled. Yet beneath that control lurked unmistakable frustration. My ancestors united worlds, built empires, defended our people from extinction. She paused. And today, I face a problem they never imagined. A ripple of uncomfortable movement spread through the crowd. Marcus noticed several warriors suddenly becoming very interested in the floor. That was rarely a good sign. The Queen continued. My daughters have reached full maturity. A large holographic display activated behind the royal platform. 3 figures appeared above the arena. The crowd reacted instantly. Not with applause. Not with excitement. With something closer to nervous respect. Marcus understood why immediately. The women displayed above the arena were terrifying. Not because they looked cruel. Not because they looked dangerous. Although they clearly were. No. They were terrifying because they looked impossibly capable. The first stood in military armor. Sharp-eyed. Calm. Intelligent. Every part of her posture radiated confidence. Princess Curaval. The undefeated strategist. The woman whose military campaigns were studied across multiple star systems. The second looked even more intimidating. Princess Zorans. The unconquerable. A warrior who had never lost a single duel. Not one. In her entire life. Marcus had read statistics about her. The statistics were absurd. She had beaten opponents larger than herself. Smarter than herself. More experienced than herself. The outcome was always identical. She won. The third princess looked different. At first glance, less intimidating. Then Marcus noticed her eyes. And immediately changed his mind. Princess Lyraine. Scholar. Philosopher. Warrior. The youngest daughter. And according to Marcus's research, possibly the most dangerous mind in the royal family. The holograms faded. The Queen sighed. A surprisingly human gesture. I have given my daughters every opportunity. I have invited warriors. Champions. Nobles. Military commanders. Strategists. The Queen's gaze swept across the arena. And yet, silence. The crowd visibly tensed. Marcus suddenly had the feeling he was about to witness something deeply uncomfortable. He was correct. Not one of you has stepped forward. The words hit like artillery. Several warriors winced. Others looked embarrassed. A few appeared outright ashamed. Marcus blinked. Wait. Was that the issue? The Queen's daughters couldn't find partners? That couldn't possibly be right. They were royalty. Brilliant. Respected. Powerful. Why would nobody? Then realization struck. Oh. Because they were brilliant. Respected. Powerful. And terrifying. That would do it. The Queen folded her arms. My daughters are not weak. No one questions that. They are not lacking intelligence. No one questions that either. She leaned forward slightly. The problem is that every male who approaches them falls into one of 2 categories. Now the crowd looked actively uncomfortable. Marcus sensed disaster approaching. The Queen continued. The first category approaches with arrogance. Several warriors visibly shrank. They assumed superiority. They assumed dominance. They assumed victory. Her expression hardened. My daughters destroy them. A few spectators coughed. Nobody laughed. Apparently because everyone knew it was true. The second category never approaches at all. That statement landed even harder. The Queen's eyes narrowed. They convince themselves failure is inevitable. They convince themselves they are unworthy. They convince themselves fear is wisdom. Her voice grew sharper. And so they do nothing. Silence. Heavy, painful silence. Marcus felt like he was watching an entire civilization get lectured by its mother. Which, technically, might have been exactly what was happening. The Queen stepped forward. For the first time, genuine emotion entered her voice. I do not need perfect warriors. I do not need invincible champions. I do not need men who pretend they are fearless. Her gaze swept across thousands of assembled fighters. I need someone brave enough to try. The arena became completely silent. Marcus looked around. Surely someone would step forward now. A challenge from the Queen herself? A direct invitation? An opportunity to join the royal bloodline? Someone would move. Right? Nobody moved. Not a single warrior. Not one. Marcus couldn't believe it. Thousands of elite fighters. Thousands. And every one of them remained rooted in place. The Queen looked genuinely disappointed. Not angry. Not furious. Disappointed. Which somehow felt worse. My daughters have defeated every arrogant fool. Her voice softened slightly. And intimidated every honest one. Another pause. Then came the question. The question that changed everything. The question Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. Is there no one among you brave enough to stand beside them? Silence. Absolute silence. Thousands of warriors. Not one answer. Not one movement. Not one volunteer. Marcus stared in disbelief. This wasn't a combat challenge. This wasn't a suicide mission. This wasn't certain death. It was simply the courage to try. And still, nobody moved. The Queen slowly lowered her head. For the first time all day, she looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone carrying a burden for far too long. Marcus felt something unexpected. Sympathy. Because beneath all the royal authority, all the military power, all the intimidating presence, she sounded like a mother worried about her daughters. A mother watching an entire civilization decide they were too intimidating to love. And somehow, that felt unfair. Marcus swallowed. The thought should have ended there. It should have remained a private observation. A moment of empathy. Nothing more. Instead, the crowd began shifting. People turning. Looking. Staring. Marcus frowned. Why were they? Then he remembered. Challenge space. He was still standing there. Alone. Directly in the center of the arena. Exactly where a volunteer would stand. A horrible realization began forming inside his mind. The Queen's eyes lifted. Locked onto him. The crowd followed. Thousands of faces. Thousands of expectations. Thousands of assumptions. Marcus felt his soul attempt to leave his body. Because suddenly he understood. Every single person in the arena thought he was answering the Queen's question. And the worst part? If he didn't explain himself immediately, they were going to keep thinking that. His mouth opened. Ready to apologize. Ready to explain. Ready to clarify that he was merely a lost researcher who had absolutely no business being involved in any of this. Then Queen Varana spoke. And the entire arena fell silent once more. Waiting. Watching. Expecting. Anyone approach Marcus suddenly realized that whatever happened next would probably change his life forever. The most dangerous sentence Marcus Chen had ever spoken. The silence stretched. 1 second. 2 seconds. 5. Marcus could feel thousands of eyes focused on him. Waiting. Watching. Judging. The pressure was almost physical. Every survival instinct in his body screamed the same message. Explain. Immediately. Before this gets worse. Marcus wholeheartedly agreed. This situation had already reached levels of misunderstanding that should have been scientifically impossible. He was not a warrior. He was not a challenger. He was definitely not a potential royal suitor. He was a xenoanthropologist who had taken a wrong turn. That was the entire explanation. A stupid explanation. But a perfectly valid one. All he had to do was say it. Simple. Reasonable. Safe. Marcus opened his mouth. Your Majesty, I think there has been a misunder. Then he looked up. And saw Queen Varana. For a brief moment, something flickered across her face. Not anger. Not expectation. Not command. Hope. Tiny. Almost invisible. But unmistakable. The expression hit Marcus harder than any physical blow ever could. Because suddenly he understood something. For everyone else in the arena, this was ceremony. Politics. Tradition. For her, this was personal. This wasn't a queen searching for political advantage. This was a mother worried about her daughters. A mother who had just asked an entire civilization for courage. And received silence. Marcus swallowed. The words of apology died in his throat. The arena remained silent. Thousands of warriors stood frozen. None willing to move. None willing to answer. None willing to risk failure. Marcus looked around. The strongest warriors on the planet. Elite commanders. Champions. Heroes. And every one of them was waiting for someone else to step forward. The realization irritated him. Not because he judged them. He understood their fear. Actually, he understood it perfectly. The princesses were terrifying. Ching them risked humiliation. Failure. Public embarrassment. Maybe worse. The fear made sense. But understanding fear and respecting it were not always the same thing. Because eventually a point arrived where fear became an excuse. And Marcus had spent his entire academic career studying civilizations destroyed by people waiting for someone else to act. Someone else to volunteer. Someone else to take responsibility. Someone else to accept risk. Nobody ever did. Until everything fell apart. A thought entered his mind. A dangerous thought. The kind of thought that usually preceded bad decisions. If nobody else will answer. His brain immediately interrupted. Absolutely not. Marcus agreed. It was a terrible idea. A catastrophically terrible idea. Unfortunately, the thought refused to leave. Queen Varana spoke again. Her voice softer now. Almost disappointed. Is there truly no one? The question echoed through the arena. No answer. Not one. Marcus looked at the warriors again. Still nothing. The queen slowly nodded. As if accepting a painful truth. And something about that expression bothered him. Deeply. Because he recognized it. It was the look people wore when they stopped expecting help. The look people wore when disappointment became routine. Marcus hated that look. He'd seen it before. After failed rescue operations. After research disasters. After tragedies nobody wanted to discuss. The look never got easier to watch. His stomach tightened. This was not his problem. He reminded himself of that repeatedly. Not his culture. Not his species. Not his responsibility. Not his business. He should leave. Immediately. Right now. Before things got worse. His mouth opened. And his brain prepared the smartest decision of his entire life. Then his mouth betrayed him. Completely. I'm brave enough. The words echoed across the arena. Marcus froze. The arena froze. Reality froze. For one impossible moment, the entire universe appeared to stop functioning. Marcus stared into space. His brain processing what had just happened. Slowly. Painfully. Like a computer attempting to run software far beyond its capabilities. Then realization arrived. Followed immediately by horror. Oh no! The arena exploded. Not with cheers. Not with applause. With shock. Pure shock. Thousands of voices erupted simultaneously. Warriors turned toward one another. Arguments began instantly. Disbelief. confusion, laughter, astonishment. Every possible reaction happening at once. Marcus heard fragments. A human? Did he actually? Is he insane? That's a scholar. Did he just volunteer? What is wrong with humans? Marcus wondered the same thing. Particularly the last question. On the royal platform, all three princesses had become very interested. Moments earlier they had looked bored, disappointed, resigned. Now they looked fully awake. Princess Curaval folded her arms, studying him, analyzing him, probably calculating exactly how quickly he would fail. Princess Zorans tilted her head slightly, like a predator examining something unusual. Not threatening, just curious, which somehow felt more dangerous. Princess Lyrane simply watched, quietly, thoughtfully, her expression impossible to read. That disturbed Marcus the most. Queen Varana remained silent. The arena gradually quieted, the noise fading until only silence remained once again. The queen descended from her platform. One step, then another. The entire arena watched. Marcus considered running. The idea lasted approximately half a second. Running from the Queen of Thika Prime seemed unlikely to improve his situation. So he stayed. Mostly because his legs had forgotten how to function. The Queen stopped directly in front of him. Up close, the size difference was intimidating. Marcus was not a small man by human standards. The Queen still towered over him. Her presence felt overwhelming. Not because she threatened him. Because she didn't need to. Confidence radiated from her naturally. Like gravity. Like sunlight. Like something fundamental. For several seconds she simply studied him. Marcus tried not to panic. His success was limited. Finally she spoke. You are human. Marcus nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. Silence. The Queen continued. You are not a warrior. Correct. You are a scholar. Also correct. You are significantly smaller than our males. Marcus looked around. Unfortunately that was also correct. The Queen folded her arms. You possess none of the traditional qualities our people consider necessary. Marcus opened his mouth. Closed it again. Because arguing seemed difficult when every statement was objectively true. The Queen leaned slightly closer. And yet, the entire arena leaned forward. Waiting. You claim sufficient courage to face my daughters. Marcus swallowed. Hard. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat. To apologize. To explain. To admit this entire thing was an accident. And maybe it was. Maybe it should have ended there. But another part of him refused. Because now that he'd spoken, backing down felt worse. Much worse. So Marcus took a deep breath. Then another. And met the Queen's eyes. I'm terrified, Your Majesty. A ripple moved through the crowd. The honesty surprised them. Marcus continued anyway. I'm smaller. Weaker. Less experienced. And completely aware of how badly this could end. The Queen remained silent. Listening. So why continue? She asked. Marcus thought carefully. Then answered with absolute honesty. Because courage isn't being unafraid. The arena became completely silent. It's acting despite fear. Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs. I'm afraid right now. Very afraid. A few warriors actually laughed. Not mockingly. Almost respectfully. Marcus continued. But I'm still standing here. Silence. Absolute silence. The Queen stared at him. Long enough that Marcus began wondering whether he'd made the worst mistake of his life. Then something unexpected happened. Queen Varana smiled. Very slightly. But unmistakably. And for the first time since entering the arena, Marcus became truly afraid. Because he had the sudden realization that the Queen wasn't going to dismiss him. She wasn't going to send him away. She wasn't going to call this a misunderstanding. No. She was considering him. And somehow, that was far more terrifying. Courage or foolishness? The smile lasted less than a second. Most people in the arena probably missed it. Marcus did not. Because when one of the most powerful rulers in known space smiled at you immediately after you volunteered for something terrifying, it was generally worth paying attention. The queen straightened. For several moments she simply studied him. Not as a ruler examining a subject. Not as a warrior judging an opponent. But as someone attempting to solve a puzzle. Marcus had the uncomfortable feeling that he was the puzzle. The arena remained silent. Thousands of spectators waited. Nobody dared interrupt. Finally, Queen Varana spoke. "You claim courage?" Marcus nodded carefully. "I believe so." A slight murmur spread through the crowd. The queen ignored it. "And yet courage is frequently confused with stupidity." The arena erupted with laughter. Marcus sighed. "Fair. That was entirely fair." The queen continued. "Many individuals mistake recklessness for bravery." She began walking slowly around him. Like a predator circling prey. Not threatening. Evaluating. Some volunteer because they seek glory. A few warriors shifted uncomfortably. Some volunteer because they underestimate danger. Several more looked away. Some volunteer because they desire attention. The queen stopped. Directly in front of him. And some volunteer because they fail to understand what they are accepting. Marcus resisted the urge to point out that he definitely qualified for that last category. Instead, he remained silent. The queen folded her arms. "So tell me, human." Her golden eyes locked onto his. "Which one are you?" The question hung in the air. Marcus immediately wished he had prepared for it. Unfortunately, spontaneous life-changing decisions rarely came with preparation time. So he answered honestly. "I don't know." The arena blinked. Apparently nobody had expected that. Even the queen looked surprised. Marcus shrugged slightly. "It's the truth." The queen remained silent. Waiting. So Marcus continued. "I know I'm not seeking glory." "Why?" "Because this is horrifying." Several warriors laughed again. A few even nodded. Marcus pointed toward the royal platform. "Those are the most intimidating women I've ever seen." Princess Zorans actually smiled. A dangerous development. Marcus pretended not to notice. "I'm also not seeking attention." The queen raised an eyebrow. "You currently possess the attention of nearly 30,000 spectators." Marcus looked around. His expression immediately became miserable. "Exactly." More laughter. This time louder. Even Queen Varana seemed amused. Slightly. The tension in the arena began changing. Subtly. Earlier the crowd had viewed him as an absurdity. A scholar who had wandered into a warrior ceremony. Now they were listening. Actually listening. Because Marcus wasn't pretending. He wasn't boasting. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was simply telling the truth. And honesty was surprisingly rare in ceremonial challenges. The queen noticed it too. "Then why volunteer?" Marcus hesitated. Because that was the real question. The important question. The one he had been avoiding. Why had he done it? He wasn't entirely certain. But he tried anyway. When you asked for someone brave enough. Marcus paused. Choosing his words carefully. "I expected someone to answer." The queen said nothing. The crowd remained silent. I looked around. Marcus glanced toward the assembled warriors. And nobody moved. A few warriors visibly winced. Marcus immediately felt guilty. That wasn't his intention. He wasn't criticizing them. Not really. So he clarified. "I understand why." That got their attention. Marcus continued. "Fear makes sense. Failure is painful. Humiliation is painful. Rejection is painful." Many warriors nodded slowly. The human understood. That mattered. Marcus looked back at the queen. "But eventually..." He took a breath. "Eventually someone has to move first." Silence. The arena became still. Because everyone understood what he meant. Marcus remembered something from Earth. An old lesson his father had taught him. A lesson he hadn't thought about in years. When I was young. The crowd leaned closer. Marcus smiled faintly. My father used to tell me something. The Queen waited. Marcus spoke softly. He said courage isn't the absence of fear. A few people nodded. They had heard that phrase before. Marcus continued. He said courage is deciding that something matters more than fear. The arena became silent again. Deeper this time. More thoughtful. Marcus looked around. Today I watched thousands of warriors afraid. Nobody argued. Because it was true. Then Marcus looked directly at the Queen. And I watched a mother disappointed. The arena froze. Completely froze. Several nobles looked horrified. A few officers nearly stopped breathing. Nobody spoke to the Queen that way. Nobody. Not because it was disrespectful. Because it was personal. And personal truths carried risks. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then something unexpected happened. Queen Varana laughed. A genuine laugh. Not loud. Not dramatic. But real. The sound echoed through the arena. Thousands of spectators stared. Many had probably never heard it before. The Queen shook her head. A mother. Marcus suddenly wondered if he had just destroyed his future. The Queen smiled again. My advisors spend decades discussing politics. She gestured toward the nobles. My generals discuss military implications. She pointed toward the officers. My diplomats discuss alliances. Another gesture. Then she looked at Marcus. And somehow the human scholar identifies the actual problem in under 5 minutes. The crowd erupted into laughter. Even Marcus laughed nervously. Mostly because he was still alive. The Queen's expression slowly became serious again. But courage alone is insufficient. The laughter faded. The atmosphere shifted. Immediately, everyone sensed something important approaching. The Queen stepped closer. Do you know why warriors fear my daughters? Marcus nodded. Several reasons. Name them. Marcus swallowed. That sounded dangerous. Very dangerous. Unfortunately, he had already come this far. So he answered. They are stronger than most men. The Queen nodded. Continue. They are more successful. Another nod. They are smarter. Princess Curaval looked pleased. Marcus regretted noticing. And they're not interested in pretending otherwise. Now the princesses were openly paying attention. Which felt extremely unhealthy. The Queen folded her arms. Good. Then her voice hardened. But those are not the real reasons. Marcus frowned. No. No. The Queen looked toward her daughters. Then back toward him. The real reason is that my daughters force people to confront themselves. The arena fell silent. Because every warrior present knew she was right. The Queen continued. An arrogant man meets Curaval and discovers he is not the smartest person in the room. An aggressive man meets Orans and discovers he is not the strongest. A dishonest man meets Lyrain and discovers he cannot lie to himself. The words echoed through the arena. Heavy. Powerful. True. And suddenly Marcus understood. This had never been about the princesses. Not really. It was about fear. The fear of inadequacy. The fear of comparison. The fear of discovering you weren't as exceptional as you believed. The Queen stared directly into his eyes. So I ask again. The entire arena held its breath. Why are you here? Marcus thought carefully. Longer this time. Because now he understood the question. Finally he answered. I don't think I'm the strongest. Silence. I don't think I'm the smartest. Princess Curaval smirked. Marcus ignored her. I definitely don't think I'm the bravest. Princess Zorans raised an eyebrow. Marcus ignored that too. The Queen waited. So why? Marcus smiled slightly. A small, honest smile. Because I'm comfortable being wrong. The arena froze. Nobody expected that answer. Marcus continued. If I fail, I learn. If I embarrass myself, I survive. If I discover I'm not good enough. He shrugged. Then at least I'll know. The silence that followed felt different. Not awkward. Respectful. Deeply respectful. Because suddenly everyone understood. The human wasn't fearless. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't reckless. He was simply willing to risk failure. And that quality was far rarer than strength. Queen Varana remained silent for a long time. Then finally, she nodded. Once. Slowly. Deliberately. The gesture sent a wave through the entire arena. Because everyone understood what it meant. The queen had reached a conclusion. And whatever happened next, Marcus Chen had just passed the first test. Without even realizing it existed. Winning the queen's approval was the easy part. The arena remained silent. Not the awkward silence Marcus had experienced earlier. Not the uncomfortable silence of confusion. This was something different. Respect. For the first time since walking into the arena, 30,000 spectators weren't looking at him like an accident. They were looking at him like a participant. Marcus wasn't sure whether that was an improvement. Honestly, it felt worse. Because accidents could leave. Participants had responsibilities. And responsibilities tended to survive long after common sense disappeared. Queen Varana turned away from him and faced the arena. Immediately, every conversation stopped. Every spectator focused. Every warrior stood straighter. The ruler of Thika Prime had made her decision. Now everyone would hear it. The human has answered. Her voice echoed through the arena. He has demonstrated honesty. A pause. He has demonstrated humility. Another pause. And he has demonstrated sufficient courage to remain standing despite understanding the danger before him. The crowd murmured approvingly. Marcus briefly considered informing everyone that remaining standing had become increasingly difficult. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Queen Varana raised a hand. The crowd instantly fell silent. However, the single word transformed the atmosphere. Every warrior present understood its meaning. Marcus didn't. Not yet. He would. Very soon. The queen's eyes shifted toward her daughters. No individual may claim worthiness merely through words. The three princesses stood. The crowd reacted immediately. Even the veteran warriors appeared nervous. Marcus suddenly felt very, very concerned. The queen continued. My daughters are not prizes. Her voice hardened. They are not rewards. They are not possessions. The arena became completely silent. They are individuals. Warriors. Leaders. And each possesses the right to determine who may stand beside them. Marcus liked that. It sounded fair. Reasonable. Civilized. Then Queen Varana smiled slightly. And Marcus immediately regretted feeling optimistic. Therefore, the massive holographic display activated once more. The arena darkened. 3 glowing symbols appeared overhead. Each representing one princess. Each representing one challenge. Marcus stared upward. A terrible feeling formed in his stomach. The queen spoke. If the human wishes to continue. Marcus noticed she said if. That seemed important. He must survive the 3 trials. The crowd erupted. Thousands of voices. Thousands of reactions. Excitement. Shock. Disbelief. Marcus focused on one particular word. Survive. She had said survive. Not complete. Not pass. Survive. That felt deeply concerning. The first symbol illuminated. A silver crown surrounded by geometric patterns. Princess Curaval stepped forward. Immediately the crowd quieted. The eldest princess surveyed the arena with calm confidence. Everything about her projected control. Marcus suddenly understood why entire military academies studied her campaigns. She looked like someone who planned 6 moves ahead while everyone else was still considering the first. Curaval folded her arms. My trial concerns understanding. Her voice was calm. Measured. Precise. A leader who cannot think becomes a liability. The hologram above her shifted. Displaying battlefields. Starships. Military formations. Strategic simulations. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Because strategy games had a habit of becoming incredibly complicated incredibly quickly. Curaval continued. Strength is common. Intelligence is rare. The princess looked directly at Marcus. If you wish to stand beside me. The arena seemed to hold its breath. You must prove that your mind can adapt when certainty fails. Marcus wasn't entirely sure what that meant. Which was probably intentional. The crowd murmured. Clearly everyone understood the implications better than he did. That was not reassuring. The second symbol illuminated. A burning spear surrounded by crimson light. Princess Zoran stepped forward. And somehow the atmosphere changed immediately. Curaval felt like a storm you could predict. Zoran's felt like one that enjoyed surprises. She moved with effortless confidence. The confidence of someone who had never doubted victory. Ever. The legendary warrior crossed her arms. My trial concerns courage. Marcus nearly laughed. Of course it did. Naturally, the undefeated combat champion would test courage. Why wouldn't she? Unfortunately, Zoran's wasn't finished. Not battlefield courage. Marcus paused. Interesting. Anyone can be fearless when surrounded by allies. The princess began slowly pacing. Anyone can be brave when victory feels certain. The crowd listened carefully. Zoran stopped. Then looked directly at Marcus. My trial concerns fear. Marcus blinked. That sounded significantly worse. The princess smiled slightly. The expression carried alarming levels of confidence. I will discover what frightens you. The arena became silent. And then I will ask whether you continue walking forward. Marcus immediately disliked this challenge. Very much. Because unlike strategy, fear was personal. And personal things tended to hurt. Then the third symbol illuminated. A silver star surrounded by flowing light. Princess Lyraine stepped forward. The youngest daughter. The philosopher. The scholar. The one Marcus understood least. The crowd quieted even further. A surprising reaction. Because unlike her sisters, Lyraine didn't appear intimidating. Not at first glance. But then she spoke. And Marcus immediately understood. My trial concerns spirit. Her voice was gentle. Almost soft. The kind of voice people trusted instinctively. Which made it infinitely more dangerous. Marcus had spent enough time studying psychology to recognize that immediately. The truly dangerous questions were rarely shouted. They were whispered. Lyraine folded her hands. You may deceive others. The crowd listened. You may deceive enemies. The princess took another step forward. You may even deceive yourself. Marcus felt an uncomfortable sensation in his chest. Because somehow he knew exactly where this was going. Lyraine's eyes locked onto his. But truth remains truth. Silence. The arena became perfectly still. My trial asks a simple question. Marcus waited. What kind of person are you when nobody is watching? The question hit harder than any threat. Harder than any battlefield. Harder than any weapon. Because there was no obvious answer. Only honesty. And honesty could be terrifying. The three princesses returned to their positions. The arena remained silent. Marcus stared upward. Trying to process everything. Strategy. Fear. Spirit. 3 trials. 3 impossible challenges. 3 princesses who looked entirely confident he would fail. The realization was oddly calming. Perhaps because the situation had become so absurd that panic no longer seemed useful. Queen Varana faced him once more. Marcus Chen. His full name echoed across the arena. The crowd quieted. The queen's expression remained neutral. There is no shame in refusing. The statement surprised him. Several spectators looked surprised too. The queen continued. You have already demonstrated courage. A pause. You owe no one further proof. Marcus appreciated that. Genuinely. Because it meant this wasn't a trap. He could leave. Right now. Walk away. Return to research. Return to safety. Return to normal life. The option existed. which made what happened next entirely his fault. The Queen stepped closer. "If you continue," her voice became serious, "you will fail." The crowd shifted uneasily. Marcus blinked. That was unexpectedly direct. The Queen continued. "You will make mistakes. You will embarrass yourself. You will encounter weaknesses you did not know existed." Every word sounded painfully believable. "And there is no guarantee of success." Silence. The Queen looked directly into his eyes. "So I ask one final time." The entire arena held its breath. Every warrior, every noble, every spectator, every princess. Waiting. "Do you still wish to proceed?" Marcus looked toward the exits. Then toward the crowd. Then toward the three princesses. Curaval watched with analytical curiosity. Zorans watched with anticipation. Lyrane watched quietly, as though she already knew the answer. Maybe she did. Marcus took a deep breath. Then another. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was insane. Completely insane. The smartest decision would be leaving. Immediately. Without hesitation. Unfortunately, Marcus had never built a career by consistently making the safest decisions. Slowly, he smiled. A nervous smile. But a genuine one. Then he looked directly at the Queen of Thika Prime. And answered. "Yes, Your Majesty." The arena exploded. And somewhere deep inside his mind, Marcus Chen finally realized there was absolutely no turning back. The human who refused to fight the war. 3 days later, Marcus Chen found himself standing inside a military simulation chamber so advanced that it made most human command centers look primitive. Which was unfortunate. Because Marcus was not a military commander. He was still a researcher. A researcher who had somehow agreed to participate in the most dangerous courtship process in galactic history. The chamber itself resembled a giant sphere. Walls of living crystal surrounded him. Thousands of holographic projectors floated overhead. Entire star systems appeared and disappeared in the air around him. Battlefields. Fleets. Supply routes. Planetary defenses. Economic networks. Everything connected. Everything alive. Everything terrifying. Marcus stared upward. "Well," he sighed. "This seems reasonable." Nobody laughed. Because everyone else inside the chamber was military personnel. The observation gallery above the simulation floor was completely packed. Generals. Strategists. Political leaders. Royal advisors. And of course, the three princesses. Princess Zorans appeared amused. Princess Lyrane appeared curious. Princess Curaval looked completely emotionless. Which somehow felt more intimidating than either of her sisters. The eldest princess stood at the center of the gallery. Watching. Waiting. Evaluating. Marcus suddenly remembered that Curaval had never lost a strategic competition in her life. Not once. Ever. That seemed like important information. Information he would have preferred not knowing. A massive holographic battlefield appeared in the center of the chamber. The crowd immediately quieted. Because everyone recognized it. Marcus didn't. Which was not encouraging. Curaval spoke. "The Battle of Keres." A murmur spread through the audience. The princess continued. 172 years ago. The hologram expanded. Displaying planets. Fleets. Defense lines. Military assets. Supply chains. Everything. Marcus felt his headache beginning. This battle is taught in every military academy across our territory. Curaval looked directly at him. "Do you know why?" Marcus considered several possible answers. Most involved disaster. "I assume something went wrong?" A few officers laughed. The princess did not. "Everything went wrong." The battlefield expanded. Millions of combat units appeared. Enemy fleets. Defensive fortresses. Orbital platforms. The scale was staggering. Marcus stared. Human wars rarely reach this level. At least not anymore. Curaval gestured toward the display. "Our forces outnumbered the enemy." A section illuminated. We possessed superior technology. Another section glowed. Superior logistics. More light. Superior industry. Everything looked overwhelmingly favorable. Marcus frowned. So you won. The crowd laughed. This time even Curaval smiled slightly. No. Marcus blinked. No. No. The princess folded her arms. We suffered one of the greatest defeats in our history. The chamber fell silent. Marcus studied the battlefield. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Because from what he could see, the Thicarians should have won. Easily. That kind of advantage was normally overwhelming. Curaval noticed his expression. Do you see the problem? Marcus looked again. Then again. Then again. 10 minutes passed. The entire chamber watched. Nobody interrupted. Finally Marcus spoke. No. The princess nodded. Good. Marcus frowned. Good. Most strategists invent answers. The crowd murmured. Curaval continued. Admitting ignorance is useful. Marcus appreciated that. At least until she spoke again. Now solve it. Marcus immediately stopped appreciating it. The simulation activated. Suddenly the battlefield became interactive. Data flooded into his interface. Fleet movements. Supply reports. Political updates. Economic projections. Tactical intelligence. Threat assessments. It was overwhelming. Thousands of variables. Millions of moving parts. Marcus stared in horror. How long do I have? Curaval answered immediately. 4 hours. Marcus relaxed slightly. That seemed manageable. Then the princess continued. Commanders normally receive 6 months. The relaxation disappeared. Entirely. The audience settled into their seats. Everyone expected failure. Marcus could feel it. The officers expected failure. The nobles expected failure. The military analysts expected failure. Even Zorans appeared skeptical. Only Lyrain seemed interested. Not hopeful. Interested. Like a scientist observing an experiment. Marcus wasn't sure whether that was comforting. For the first hour, he studied. Not fighting. Not planning. Studying. Every report. Every supply route. Every political document. Every economic projection. Everything. The officers grew restless. Curaval remained silent. Watching. Waiting. At the 90-minute mark, Marcus suddenly laughed. The entire chamber froze. Because laughter was not the expected response. Curaval raised an eyebrow. What is amusing? Marcus looked up. This isn't a military problem. Silence. Absolute silence. The crowd stared. Several generals looked offended. Curaval's eyes narrowed. Explain. Marcus pointed toward the battlefield. The enemy never intended to win. The chamber exploded. Arguments erupted instantly. Military officers protested. Analysts objected. Several advisors looked horrified. Curaval raised a hand. Instant silence returned. Her gaze never left Marcus. Continue. Marcus approached the central display. The entire simulation assumes the objective is military victory. He pointed toward the enemy territory. But that's wrong. The crowd watched carefully. Marcus continued. The enemy cannot win. A pause. They know they cannot win. Another pause. So why are they fighting? Nobody answered. Marcus smiled. Because now he understood. They're not fighting to win. He pointed toward several key locations. They are fighting to make victory too expensive. Silence. The chamber froze. Because suddenly, everyone saw it. Curaval stepped forward. For the first time all day, genuine interest appeared in her expression. Marcus continued. The enemy leadership understands mathematics. He highlighted casualty projections. Economic damage. Political instability. They don't need to beat you. The display shifted. They only need to make winning cost more than losing. A stunned silence filled the chamber. Because the logic was undeniable. Curaval slowly nodded. Interesting. Coming from her. That sounded almost like praise. Marcus turned toward the simulation. You're trying to win the war. The battlefield illuminated. I'm going to end it. The audience exchanged confused looks. Several officers frowned. Curaval folded her arms. How? Marcus smiled. A very human smile. The kind that usually preceded trouble. Instead of attacking enemy fleets, he opened diplomatic channels. The audience gasped. Instead of launching offensives, he targeted economic incentives. More gasps. Instead of destroying infrastructure, he rebuilt it. The chamber erupted into confusion. Generals began arguing loudly. Military officers looked physically uncomfortable. One advisor nearly fainted. Curaval remained silent, watching carefully. 3 hours later, the simulation ended. Not with victory. Not with conquest. Not with annihilation. With negotiation. The enemy government surrendered voluntarily. The war ended. The casualty count dropped by 93%. Economic recovery began immediately. Political stability improved. And most importantly, the enemy population no longer wanted to fight. The chamber became completely silent. Marcus looked around. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Nobody seemed entirely certain what had happened. Finally, a senior general stood. His expression looked almost offended. You changed the victory conditions. Marcus nodded. Yes. The general blinked. That wasn't the assignment. Marcus shrugged. It solved the problem. Silence. Absolute silence. Then, Princess Curaval laughed. For the first time. A genuine laugh. The chamber froze. Because apparently that almost never happened. Curaval descended from the gallery. Stopped directly before Marcus. Studied him. Long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then she spoke. The objective was never military victory. Marcus nodded. I noticed. The princess smiled slightly. The objective was adaptability. The crowd understood immediately. Marcus did not. Curaval explained. Every strategist before you fought the simulation. She pointed toward the battlefield. You questioned the simulation itself. Silence. The princess extended her hand. A traditional gesture of respect. One rarely offered. Especially by royalty. Marcus stared. Then accepted. The audience erupted. Because the impossible had happened. The human scholar had passed the first trial. Not by winning the war. But by refusing to fight it. And for the first time since entering the arena, Princess Curaval looked genuinely impressed. The thing Marcus feared most wasn't death. The victory celebration lasted exactly 12 minutes. Then Princess Zorans ruined everything. Congratulations. The warrior princess leaned against one of the arena pillars. Arms crossed. Expression amused. Marcus immediately became suspicious. Because people who looked that amused were usually planning something unpleasant. The fact that Zorans was one of the most dangerous warriors in known space only made the situation worse. Marcus accepted a glass of water. Thank you. You impressed my sister. Apparently. Zoran smiled. A predator's smile. The kind that belonged on hunting animals. Not royalty. Now comes the difficult part. Marcus stopped drinking. Slowly. Carefully. More difficult than solving a military disaster. Much. The answer came instantly. Without hesitation. Without doubt. Marcus suddenly missed Curaval. 3 days later, Marcus stood at the entrance of an ancient mountain temple. The structure sat nearly 2 kilometers above sea level. Massive cliffs surrounded it. Clouds drifted beneath the stone bridges. The wind howled through ancient pillars carved centuries before humanity discovered faster-than-light travel. The place was beautiful. And deeply unsettling. Marcus hated heights. Passionately. Thoroughly. Professionally. Nobody knew this. At least nobody should have known this. Which meant one thing. He turned toward Zorans. How did you know? The princess adjusted her travel cloak. Know what? Marcus pointed toward the terrifying drop beside the bridge. That. Zorans followed his finger. Oh. A pause. Then a smile. You're afraid of heights. Marcus closed his eyes. Yes. Very afraid. Extremely. The princess looked delighted. Marcus was beginning to suspect she enjoyed this trial far too much. The journey had started that morning. Marcus had expected combat training, physical challenges, perhaps survival exercises. Those made sense. Zorans was a warrior. Warriors tested strength. Instead, she had spent 6 hours asking questions. Simple questions. Uncomfortable questions. Questions Marcus didn't particularly enjoy answering. Questions like, what scares you? What do you avoid? What keeps you awake at night? Marcus had attempted several evasive responses. None survived longer than 30 seconds. Because Zorans possessed an extraordinary talent. She could detect dishonesty almost instantly. Not lies. Avoidance. The warrior princess had spent her entire life reading opponents. Apparently that skill transferred disturbingly well into conversations. The bridge stretched ahead, hundreds of meters long, suspended above a canyon deep enough to disappear into clouds. Marcus stared at it, then looked back, then looked forward again. The bridge had not improved. You're joking. No. Testing courage with heights is a cliché. You're still afraid. Marcus sighed. Fair point. Zoran stepped onto the bridge. Effortlessly. Naturally. Like gravity had personally agreed not to bother her. Marcus remained where he was. The wind intensified. The bridge swayed slightly. His stomach immediately attempted to resign from active duty. The princess turned. Waiting. Watching. Not mocking. Not pressuring. Simply observing. Marcus hated that more. Because if she mocked him, he could be angry. If she pressured him, he could resist. Instead she simply waited, allowing him to make the choice himself. 10 minutes passed. Marcus still stood at the entrance. The bridge remained terrible. The canyon remained terrible. Everything remained terrible. Finally Zoran spoke. Why haven't you moved? Marcus stared at her. Because I'm afraid. The princess nodded. And what? Is that the entire answer? Marcus frowned. Something about the question bothered him. Because she wasn't asking about the bridge. Not really. She was asking something else. Something deeper. Something more dangerous. Slowly, Marcus realized something. He had spent years organizing his life around avoiding discomfort. Not consciously. Nobody did that consciously. But it happened anyway. You avoid difficult conversations. Avoid painful memories. Avoid risks. Avoid failure. Avoid vulnerability. One compromise at a time. One excuse at a time. One delay at a time. Until eventually, fear began making decisions on your behalf. The realization hit harder than expected. Zorans watched him carefully. What are you thinking? Marcus laughed bitterly. That this isn't about heights. The princess smiled. Now he understood. Good. The answer carried surprising warmth. For the first time since meeting her, Marcus realized something important. Zorans wasn't testing fear. She was testing choice. The warrior princess walked back across the bridge, stopped beside him, then pointed toward the canyon. When I was young. Marcus blinked. A story? From Zorans? That seemed rare. The princess continued. I fell. Marcus stared. You what? I fell. She pointed downward. Approximately 600 meters. Marcus nearly choked. How are you alive? Luck. The answer came instantly. No pride. No exaggeration. Just truth. Luck and medical technology. The wind carried silence between them. Then Zorans continued. Afterward. She looked toward the canyon. I became afraid. Marcus frowned. You. The undefeated warrior smiled sadly. Especially me. A long pause followed. Then she spoke again. I avoided heights for years. Marcus listened. People assumed I wasn't afraid. The princess laughed softly. They were wrong. Another pause. I simply became tired of allowing fear to make decisions for me. The words settled heavily. Because Marcus understood them immediately. The bridge swayed again. Still terrifying. Still horrible. Still entirely unacceptable. Marcus stared at it. Then at the canyon. Then at Zoran's. His heart hammered. His hands trembled. His legs felt weak. Nothing had improved. Nothing had changed. He was still afraid. Very afraid. The fear remained completely real. Then he remembered something he had said to the queen. Weeks earlier. Back in the arena. Courage isn't being unafraid. The memory felt painfully inconvenient. Zoran's raised an eyebrow. Problem? Marcus sighed. I hate it when my own words get used against me. The princess laughed. A genuine laugh. Bright. Unexpected. And for the first time, she didn't seem intimidating. She seemed human. Or at least close enough. Marcus took a deep breath. Then another. Then stepped onto the bridge. Immediately regretted it. The bridge moved. The canyon existed. Gravity continued being gravity. Everything was terrible. But he didn't step back. One step. Then another. Then another. The fear never disappeared. Not once. Every instinct screamed retreat. Every muscle demanded safety. Every survival mechanism begged him to stop. He continued anyway. Because sometimes courage wasn't dramatic. Sometimes it wasn't heroic. Sometimes courage looked like taking one miserable step at a time while your entire nervous system filed formal complaints. Halfway across, Marcus froze. The bridge swayed violently. The wind intensified. Below him, nothing. Just distance. Just emptiness. Just disaster. His breathing accelerated. Panic surged. For one terrible moment, he couldn't move. Zoran's appeared beside him. Not touching. Not helping. Simply standing nearby. Present. Steady. What are you afraid of? Marcus laughed nervously. Currently? Everything. The princess shook her head. No. Her voice softened. What are you really afraid of? The question hit harder than expected. Because suddenly Marcus knew. The answer wasn't heights. Never had been. Not really. He stared into the distance. Then spoke quietly. I'm afraid of failing people. Silence. The wind howled around them. Marcus continued. I'm afraid of letting people down. Another pause. I'm afraid of trying my best and discovering it wasn't enough. The confession felt strangely relieving. Painful. But relieving. Zoran's listened. Then nodded slowly. Good. Marcus blinked. Good. Now we know. The princess smiled slightly. And now you can continue. Step by step. Marcus crossed the remainder of the bridge. Still afraid. Still uncomfortable. Still shaking. But moving. Always moving. Until finally, his feet touched solid stone. The opposite side. The end. For several seconds he simply stood there. Breathing. Trying not to collapse. Zoran's arrived moments later. The warrior princess studied him carefully. Then nodded. Once. Slowly. Respectfully. You passed. Marcus looked around. Confused. That was it. Zoran smiled. No. The princess stepped closer. The bridge was never the test. Marcus sighed. Of course it wasn't. The warrior princess extended her hand. The same gesture Curaval had offered. Respect. Recognition. Acceptance. You continued despite fear. Her voice carried genuine admiration. Most people wait for fear to disappear. A pause. It never does. Marcus accepted her hand. The spectators watching through remote feeds erupted in celebration. But Marcus barely heard them. Because for the first time in years, he understood something important. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was refusing to surrender your choices to it. And somehow, that lesson mattered far more than crossing a bridge. The truth Marcus had buried for 7 years. Marcus Chen expected danger. After surviving Princess Curavel's impossible strategic simulation and crossing a bridge that felt specifically designed to trigger every survival instinct in his body, he had developed certain expectations regarding royal trials. Those expectations included military disasters, death-defying obstacles, psychological torture, potential humiliation. What he did not expect was breakfast. Yet 3 mornings later, that was exactly what he found. A small wooden table, 2 chairs, a quiet garden, and Princess Lyraine calmly pouring tea. Marcus stopped walking. "This is the trial." Lyraine looked up. A faint smile touched her lips. "Disappointed?" Marcus frowned. "Suspicious." The princess laughed softly. The sound was gentle, warm, completely harmless, which immediately made Marcus even more suspicious. Because he had spent enough time around the royal family to learn one important lesson. The more harmless something appeared, the more dangerous it usually was. The royal gardens stretched for kilometers. Crystal streams flowed through flowering trees. Alien birds sang from silver branches. Soft sunlight filtered through emerald leaves. It was beautiful, peaceful, safe. And somehow, Marcus felt more nervous than he had standing on that bridge. Lyraine motioned toward the empty chair. "Please." Marcus sat carefully. The princess poured tea into 2 cups. For several moments neither spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. Just quiet. Intentional. Marcus waited. Eventually Lyraine handed him a cup. "Tell me about Earth." Marcus blinked. That wasn't what he expected. "What about it?" "Anything." The princess took a sip. "I'm curious." For the next hour, they talked. Not debated. Not argued. Talked. Marcus described oceans, mountains, human cities, rain, music, food. The strange way humans formed emotional attachments to animals that clearly contributed nothing useful to society. Lyraine listened carefully. As though every answer mattered. As though every detail held significance. The conversation flowed naturally, effortlessly, and gradually, Marcus relaxed. Which, as it turned out, was exactly what she wanted. Because the moment he relaxed, the questions changed. Subtly, almost invisibly. "What made you become a researcher?" Marcus answered easily. "I liked understanding things." Lyraine nodded. "And before that?" He shrugged. "I liked asking questions." The princess smiled. "And before that?" Marcus frowned. That question felt different. More personal. Still harmless. But different. "I don't know." Lyraine tilted her head. "You don't know?" Marcus laughed softly. "I was 8. The princess nodded. Then asked another question. "What were you afraid of?" Marcus blinked. There it was. The trial. Finally. He considered giving a joke answer. Spiders. Monsters. Homework. Something harmless. Something easy. Instead, he answered honestly. Being forgotten. The words surprised even him. Lyraine remained silent. Listening. Waiting. Marcus stared into his tea. "When I was young, I wanted to matter." A pause. "I think most children do." The princess nodded. "Most adults too." Marcus laughed quietly. "Fair point." The conversation continued. Question after question. Answer after answer. Never aggressive. Never confrontational. Simply curious. And somehow, that made it impossible to defend against. Curavel challenged ideas. Zorans challenged fear. Lyraine challenged honesty. And honesty was dangerous. Because honesty required participation. Hours passed. The sun slowly crossed the sky. Marcus found himself discussing things he hadn't spoken about in years. His education. His family. His ambitions. His failures. His regrets. The princess listened to everything. Judgment never appeared. Only understanding. Only curiosity. Only patience. Then she asked a question that changed everything. Have you ever lost someone? The garden became silent. The birds seemed quieter. The wind softer. Everything still. Marcus froze. Because suddenly, he knew exactly who she meant. Not family. Not friends. Not acquaintances. Someone else. Someone he hadn't spoken about in years. Someone he spent enormous amounts of energy avoiding. Lyrain noticed immediately. Not because he answered. Because he didn't. The princess set her cup down. Carefully. Gently. And waited. Marcus looked away. Toward the trees. Toward the water. Anywhere except her eyes. His chest felt tight. Painfully tight. The sensation annoyed him. Because he thought he had moved past this. Apparently not. 7 years earlier, Marcus had been part of an exploration team. 6 researchers. 3 pilots. 1 mission. A routine survey assignment. Simple. Safe. Predictable. Until it wasn't. A navigation failure. A systems malfunction. An accident. The official reports contained dozens of technical explanations. None of them mattered. Because the outcome remained the same. 9 people left. Only 1 returned. Marcus closed his eyes. The memories came immediately. Too quickly. Too clearly. The emergency alarms. The fire. The damaged hull. The screams over communication channels. The impossible choices. The final evacuation. The realization that there weren't enough escape pods. The guilt. Always the guilt. Marcus. Lyrain's voice was soft. Gentle. Present. He opened his eyes. The princess was watching him carefully. Not pushing. Not forcing. Simply waiting. And somehow, that made it harder. I lost my team. The words barely emerged. The princess nodded. When? 7 years ago. Silence. What happened? Marcus laughed bitterly. A hollow sound. The official answer. Lyrain waited. The official answer is catastrophic mechanical failure. The princess said nothing. Marcus looked down. The real answer is more complicated. A pause. I made a decision. The words felt heavy. Painful. Ancient. The princess remained completely still. Allowing him space. Allowing him choice. Marcus appreciated that. Even while hating it. Because now there was no pressure. No excuse. Only honesty. There weren't enough escape pods. The sentence shattered the silence. Lyrain listened. The ship was dying. Marcus swallowed. We knew it. Another pause. We all knew it. His voice trembled slightly. For the first time all day, Marcus stared into the distance. Seeing memories instead of gardens. Seeing flames instead of flowers. Seeing faces instead of trees. They chose me. The confession emerged quietly. Almost broken. They voted. Lyrain's eyes softened. Marcus continued. I was the youngest. A bitter laugh. The only one without a family. Another pause. The only one who could continue the research. His hands tightened around the cup. They chose me. The garden remained silent. Because some stories deserved silence. Marcus looked away. Ashamed. Even now. After 7 years. Still ashamed. I left. The words felt like betrayal. Every single time. I got into the escape pod. His voice cracked. Slightly. I watched them stay behind. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lyrain asked the question. The real question. The question hiding beneath everything else. Why do you blame yourself? Marcus laughed. Because of course she found it. Of course she did. Because I survived. The answer came instantly. No hesitation. No thought. Pure truth. The princess watched him. Waiting. Marcus continued. Because they didn't. Silence. Because they trusted me. Another pause. Because I couldn't save them. His voice lowered. Almost a whisper. And because part of me still wonders if they chose wrong. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Painful. Honest. Lyrane remained silent for a very long time. Then finally, she spoke. One sentence. Only one. Yet it struck harder than anything Curaval or Zorans had ever done. Do you believe they would be proud of who you became? Marcus froze. Completely. Because in 7 years, nobody had ever asked that question. Not counselors. Not colleagues. Not friends. Nobody. His mind immediately searched for arguments. Reasons. Deflections. Excuses. Anything. Then something unexpected happened. Images appeared. Not memories of death. Memories of life. Laughter aboard the ship. Late-night research debates. Friendships. Dreams. Conversations. People who had believed in him. People who had chosen him. And for the first time in 7 years, Marcus realized something. They hadn't sacrificed themselves because he was worthless. They hadn't chosen him because he mattered least. They had chosen him because they believed he mattered most. The realization hit like a tidal wave. Powerful. Overwhelming. Transformative. A tear escaped before he could stop it. Then another. Marcus laughed through it. Embarrassed. Relieved. Exhausted. Human. For the first time in years. Truly human. Lyrane smiled. A small smile. A kind smile. The smile of someone watching another person finally set down a burden they were never meant to carry alone. And in that moment, Marcus understood the truth. This had never been a trial of spirit. Not really. It was a trial of healing. The princess stood. Slowly. Gracefully. Then extended her hand. The same gesture her sisters had offered. Respect. Recognition. Acceptance. But somehow, this one meant more. Because she hadn't tested his strength. Or his courage. She had seen his scars. And accepted them. Princess. Lyrane smiled softly. Yes. Marcus hesitated. Then asked the question that mattered. Did I pass? The princess laughed. A warm, beautiful sound. Then she answered. Marcus Chen. Her silver eyes met his. You passed the moment you chose honesty over hiding. And for the first time since arriving on Thika Prime, Marcus felt something unexpected. Peace. The human problem no one expected. 3 days after the trial of spirit ended, the entire royal capital was in chaos. Not war. Not rebellion. Not political crisis. Something far more unusual. Confusion. Because for the first time in living memory, nobody knew what the royal family was going to do. And that terrified everyone. The Hall of Judgment stood at the center of the imperial palace. Massive crystal pillars stretched toward a ceiling lost in darkness. Thousands of nobles filled the galleries. Military commanders occupied entire sections. Scholars, governors, diplomats, even representatives from allied worlds had arrived. The attendance exceeded every prediction. Because history was about to be made. One way or another. Marcus stood near the center platform, trying very hard not to panic. Again. Which had become something of a hobby recently. The human adjusted his formal robes. Then immediately regretted it. Because thousands of people noticed. Thousands. Every movement. Every breath. Every nervous glance. Marcus hated public attention. Unfortunately, public attention seemed to love him. Above him sat Queen Varana. The ruler appeared calm. Confident. Unshakable. But those who knew her well noticed something unusual. She looked amused. Dangerously amused. Like someone watching events unfold exactly as expected. Marcus did not notice. If he had, he would have become much more concerned. The royal herald stepped forward. His voice echoed throughout the hall. Today concludes the 3 trials. The crowd fell silent. Instantly. The candidate Marcus Chen has completed every challenge. Murmurs spread. Not because people disagreed. Because they still couldn't believe it. A human. A scholar. A civilian. An outsider. Someone who had entered the process by accident. And somehow passed. The herald continued. According to ancient law. A holographic document appeared overhead. The final decision belongs to the princesses. The crowd nodded. Everyone knew the tradition. The queen could approve candidates. The empire could recognize them. But only the princesses could choose. Always. Without exception. Marcus swallowed. Because suddenly everything felt real. Until now the trials had provided focus. A task. A goal. Something practical. Now there was only waiting. And waiting was much harder. The herald raised his staff. Princess Curaval. The eldest daughter rose. Immediately the room became silent. Curaval walked toward the central platform. Every movement measured. Precise. Confident. The legendary strategist stopped before the assembly. Then looked directly at Marcus. For several seconds she said nothing. Simply observed. Evaluated. The way she always did. Finally she spoke. When Marcus Chen entered our arena. A faint smile appeared. He appeared lost. Laughter erupted throughout the chamber. Even Marcus laughed. Because it was true. Very true. Curaval continued. I expected failure. The honesty surprised nobody. I expected confusion. Another nod. I expected him to collapse beneath pressure. She paused. Then looked toward the gathered military leaders. Instead, the princess folded her arms. He challenged assumptions. A holographic image appeared overhead. The strategic simulation. The trial of intelligence. Every commander before him attempted to solve the war. The image shifted, showing military strategies. Defensive formations. Offensives. Battles. Marcus questioned the war itself. The room fell silent. Because every strategist present remembered. And every strategist present still hated admitting she was right. Curaval looked directly at the assembly. Intelligence is not knowing answers. Silence. It is knowing which questions matter. Another pause. The human understands that. The words echoed through the chamber. Heavy. Meaningful. Final. Then Curaval turned toward Marcus. For the first time, the legendary princess smiled openly. I approve. The hall erupted. Cheers. Applause. Shock. Excitement. Marcus blinked. Because somehow hearing it out loud felt different. Much different. The herald raised his staff again. Princess Zorans. The room immediately grew louder. Because everyone loved Zorans. Warriors especially. The undefeated princess strode confidently toward the center platform. Her presence filled the room. Not because she demanded attention. Because attention naturally followed her. She stopped beside her sister. Looked at Marcus. Then laughed. Immediately. Without warning. The room froze. Marcus looked confused. Should I be worried? Probably. The answer came instantly. The crowd laughed. Zorans turned toward the audience. When I first met Marcus. A grin appeared. I thought he would quit. Marcus nodded. Reasonable. More laughter. The princess continued. He was afraid. A holographic image appeared. The bridge. The canyon. The trial of courage. He admitted fear. The image shifted, showing Marcus frozen halfway across. The crowd laughed again. Marcus covered his face. Zorans raised a hand. The laughter faded. Then her expression became serious. The Empire teaches courage incorrectly. The room fell silent. Because when the greatest warrior alive criticized something, people listened. People believe courage means fearlessness. Her gaze swept across the chamber. They are wrong. Absolute silence. The princess pointed toward Marcus. Fearlessness is easy. Confused expressions appeared. Zorans continued. Fearlessness requires nothing. The room listened carefully. Courage requires action. Another pause. Courage requires choice. The princess smiled slightly, and the human continued walking. The chamber erupted into applause. Zorans looked directly at Marcus. "You are still annoying." Marcus nodded. "Understandable. You ask too many questions." Occupational hazard. The crowd laughed. Then Zorans extended her hand. A warrior's gesture. One of respect. One of equality. One rarely offered. Nevertheless. The princess smiled. "I approve." The hall exploded. Even louder this time. Because now 2 princesses had spoken. 2 out of 3. Marcus stared. His heartbeat accelerated. Because suddenly, something impossible became conceivable. Then the herald spoke again. "Princess Lyraine." Silence. Not normal silence. Deeper silence. Because everyone knew this was different. Curaval judged intelligence. Zorans judged courage. But Lyraine judged people. And that made her opinion uniquely important. The youngest princess approached slowly. Calmly. Gracefully. The room watched. Waiting. She stopped before the assembly. Then looked toward Marcus. For several seconds neither spoke. A strange moment. Quiet. Personal. Almost intimate. Despite thousands watching. Finally Lyraine turned toward the crowd. When Marcus first arrived. Her voice remained soft. Yet somehow everyone heard it. He believed strength came from achievement. Marcus frowned. That sounded familiar. Dangerously familiar. Lyraine continued. He believed worth came from success. Another pause. He believed failure diminished value. The room listened carefully. The princess smiled gently. Many people believe that. A murmur spread through the crowd. Because she wasn't talking only about Marcus anymore. She was talking about everyone. A holographic image appeared. The garden. The trial of spirit. Then another image. A damaged exploration vessel. The audience became silent. Completely silent. Lyraine's expression softened. The human carried grief. Marcus looked away. Instantly. He carried guilt. Silence. He carried pain. Another pause. For 7 years. The chamber remained perfectly still. Then Lyraine spoke the words that changed everything. The strongest thing Marcus Chen did. The audience leaned forward. Was not surviving. Silence. Was not succeeding. More silence. Was not winning. The room became motionless. It was allowing himself to heal. No one spoke. No one moved. Because suddenly the entire hall understood. Curaval admired his mind. Zorans admired his courage. But Lyraine admired his humanity. And somehow, that mattered most. The princess turned toward Marcus. Silver eyes meeting his. Warm. Understanding. Honest. Then she smiled. The same smile from the garden. The same smile that had helped him put down a burden carried for 7 years. "I approve." The hall exploded. Thousands of voices. Thousands of reactions. Applause thundered through the palace. Warriors shouted. Nobles cheered. Even diplomats abandoned decorum. Because something unprecedented had just happened. All 3 princesses had chosen the same candidate. Not a general. Not a prince. Not a champion. Not a noble. A human scholar. The hall shook with celebration. Marcus stood frozen. Completely frozen. Because his brain had stopped functioning again. Which was becoming a recurring issue. Then, something unexpected happened. The cheering slowly faded. The excitement diminished. The noise disappeared. Because Queen Varana had stood. And when the queen stood, everyone listened. The ruler descended from her throne. Walked toward Marcus. Stopped before him. The entire empire watched. Waiting. For several seconds, the queen simply studied him. Then she smiled. Slowly. Proudly. almost maternally. Marcus Chen. Her voice echoed through the hall. You have accomplished something believed impossible. The room remained silent. The queen looked toward her daughters, then back toward Marcus, and the next words sent shockwaves through the empire. Now comes the truly difficult decision. The cheering stopped instantly. Marcus blinked. Confused. Very confused. What decision? He asked. Queen Varana's smile widened. A dangerous smile. The kind that usually preceded catastrophe. Then she answered. My daughters all chose you. The hall froze. Marcus froze. Reality froze. And for the first time since entering the arena, Marcus realized he might actually be in serious trouble. The human who refused to choose. The silence was absolute. Not a single voice echoed through the hall of judgment. Not a whisper. Not a movement. Nothing. Because Queen Varana had just revealed a problem no one had considered. Marcus stared at her. She stared back. The entire empire waited. Then Marcus spoke the only reasonable response available. What? A ripple of laughter spread through the chamber. Even some nobles couldn't help themselves. The queen's smile widened slightly. An understandable reaction. Marcus pointed toward the princesses. Then toward himself. Then toward the princesses again. His brain appeared to be rebooting. All three. Yes. At the same time? Correct. Marcus blinked. Several times. Slowly. Painfully. As though hoping reality would correct itself. Reality declined. The crowd buzzed with excitement. Because this situation was unprecedented. Royal tradition had never anticipated it. Historically, candidates failed. Occasionally one succeeded. Rarely a princess approved a candidate. Never had all three agreed. Never. Not once in thousands of years. Which meant, nobody knew the rules. Marcus looked toward Curaval. The strategist stood calmly. Unbothered. Confident. Then he looked toward Zorans. The warrior princess appeared entertained. Entirely too entertained. Finally he looked toward Lyrain. She simply smiled softly. As though she already knew what he was thinking. That was unfair. The queen raised her hand. The room fell silent. Ancient law provides no guidance. A holographic document floated overhead. Thousands of years of royal traditions. Thousands of years of precedents. Not one applicable. The queen continued. Therefore the final decision belongs to Marcus Chen. The chamber erupted. Again. Because now everyone understood. The human had to choose. Marcus wished he were back on the bridge. At least the bridge only threatened physical death. This threatened social death. Possibly political death. Potentially actual death depending on how badly he handled the next few minutes. The queen looked directly at him. You may choose. Silence. The room waited. The empire waited. History waited. Marcus looked at the three princesses. Three extraordinary women. Three incredible individuals. Three people he genuinely respected. And suddenly, he realized something important. Something everyone else had missed. He took a slow breath. Then another. And finally spoke. Your Majesty. The queen nodded. Marcus hesitated. Carefully choosing his words. Because the next sentence would matter. A lot. I can't choose. The chamber exploded. Shock. Confusion. Disbelief. Thousands of voices erupted simultaneously. Several nobles nearly fell from their seats. Military officers stared in horror. Diplomats looked ready to faint. The queen raised an eyebrow. Explain. Marcus nodded. Fair request. Very fair request. So he tried. Curaval taught me how to think differently. The strategist watched silently. Marcus continued. Zorans taught me how to face fear. The warrior princess smiled slightly. And Lyrain helped me heal something I've carried for years. The hall listened. Every word. Every syllable. Marcus looked toward the three princesses. Then back toward the queen. I admire all of them. A pause. I respect all of them. Another pause. They're extraordinary. The crowd nodded. Nobody argued. Then Marcus smiled sadly. But I don't know them. Silence. Deep silence. Because nobody expected that answer. Marcus continued. I know who they are. He pointed toward the royal family. I know their accomplishments. Another gesture. I know their reputations. A pause. But that's not the same thing. The hall remained perfectly still. Marcus took a breath. Then spoke the truth. The simple truth. The dangerous truth. Choosing a partner isn't selecting a trophy. The room froze. It's choosing a person. Absolute silence. And I don't know any of them well enough to make that choice honestly. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Then, Lyrane smiled. The smallest smile. Barely noticeable. Yet somehow it changed everything. Because she understood first. Then Curaval smiled. Slowly. Thoughtfully. As though analyzing an answer and discovering it was correct. Finally, Zorans laughed. A loud, genuine laugh. The kind that echoed throughout the chamber. The crowd became confused. Then confused about being confused. Then confused about why the princesses looked happy. Queen Varana watched her daughters. Then Marcus. Then her daughters again. A realization slowly appeared in her eyes. And suddenly, the queen began laughing too. The hall froze. Because the queen almost never laughed in public. Certainly not during official proceedings. Yet here she was. Laughing. Marcus looked around nervously. Should I be concerned? Probably. Zorans answered immediately. The crowd laughed. Queen Varana finally regained composure. Then looked directly at Marcus. Human. Marcus straightened. The queen's expression softened. Not as a ruler. As a mother. For months. She gestured toward her daughters. The galaxy has treated them like achievements. Silence. Prizes. Another pause. Symbols. The hall listened carefully. The queen smiled. And you are the first person who refused. Marcus blinked. I did. You did. The queen nodded. Then Lyrane stepped forward. The trials were never about finding a husband. The crowd gasped. Marcus frowned. Wait, what? Curaval continued. The trials were designed to identify character. Zorans crossed her arms. Most candidates failed immediately. Lyrane smiled softly. Usually because they wanted something from us. Marcus looked genuinely confused. Then why all of this? The three sisters exchanged glances. Then Curaval answered. Because our mother wanted proof. The queen groaned. The crowd laughed. Proof of what? Marcus asked. Lyrane's smile widened. That someone existed who would see us as people first. Silence. Beautiful silence. The kind created when truth finally arrives. Marcus stared. Then looked toward the queen. Then toward the princesses. Then back toward the queen. You could have mentioned that earlier. The entire hall erupted into laughter. Even the queen. For several moments the celebration continued. Joyful. Warm. Genuine. Then Queen Varana raised her hand. The room quieted once more. The ruler stepped forward. Her voice echoed throughout the hall. Marcus Chen. The human looked up. The queen smiled. Proudly. You have passed every trial. A pause. You have earned the respect of my daughters. Another pause. You have earned the respect of this empire. The hall erupted in applause. Then the queen delivered her final judgment. You arrived here by accident. The crowd laughed. You remained through courage. More applause. And you succeeded through honesty. Silence. Respectful silence. The queen raised her hand toward the assembled empire. Let it be recorded. The words echoed across history. That on this day. A pause. A human scholar reminded a warrior civilization that strength is not measured by power. The hall became perfectly still. It is measured by character. Thunderous applause exploded through the chamber. Warriors stood. Nobles stood. Scholars stood. Everyone stood. Marcus looked around. Overwhelmed. Speechless. Completely unprepared for any of this. Then Lyrain leaned closer. Just enough that only he could hear. So? Marcus looked at her. Yes. The princess smiled mischievously. For the first time. Now that the trials are over. A pause. Would you like to have dinner sometime? Marcus stared. Zorans burst out laughing. Curaval covered her face. The queen closed her eyes. The entire royal family immediately understood exactly what had happened. And for the first time since entering the arena, Marcus realized the real challenge was only beginning.